Let me start by asking, what is a true god? What does godhood cost? What sacrifices pave the way to your ascendance? If at any point you think that what I'm saying is too extreme, I want you to remember the premise here is that Marika is trying to outplay and outsmart a literal god and escape her role as a replaceable puppet. It's like a human trying to trick an AI supercomputer. You can't attack from one angle or be predictable, especially given the circumstances of your position, and I ask that you take that reasoning into this. Marika is a certified monster. She has to be to win. On her journey so far, among some of the things that we know to be facts already, is that she has betrayed and essentially sacrificed what is meant to be her own brother, spurned and confined her children, banished the father of her children to die, love-bottomized her baby mama, and committed pretty brutal genocide. With this new story trailer, it's also suggested that she potentially betrayed Mikola, and if you've not seen my previous video, the entire nameless Eternal City. How could someone do all of these awful things? How could a god of a so-called Golden Order enact such atrocities? The kinds of things that we would expect of a psychopath lacking in love and loyalty. Well, I have a theory on both how and why. I'll give you the summary and then we can get lost in the devil's details together. Marika has progressively removed parts of herself and using Numen technology, the Amber Egg, likely in conjunction with the Rune of the Unborn, given them a corporeal form with individual missions acting towards the same goal: her ascendance to godhood, her freedom from the outer gods, and her total victory with the return and dominance of the Lunar Age. Why the Lunar Age? In my previous video, I explore why Marika is a Numen and potentially a ruler of one of the Eternal Cities, and that the god of the Numen is the Black Moon. Marika betrayed that culture and her own people for the Greater Will and Golden Order, who promised her godhood, and was ultimately duped into becoming their replaceable god-slave. Now she seeks to usurp the very order that she helped usurp the previous one, using the Dark Path. If you want to know more about that and the rituals seen in the DLC, please see my other video. Moving on to the point of this video, here is her warpath and the justifications. She wed the barbarian chieftain, champion of the Crucible and leader of the Tarnished, eliminating him as a potential threat and gaining herself an intimate ally. From him, she made a lord capable of eliminating one of the remaining great threats, the fire giants and their fell god, the path to their flame now clear. With him, she had 3 children, 2 cursed by the aspect of the Crucible, the twins Mohg and Morgott, and 1 suspiciously perfect child, Godwyn the Golden. It's my belief that Marika made Godwyn in the same way that she made Radagon, by divesting herself of an aspect of herself, in this case love, and giving it a corporeal form and life with the Amber Egg and Rune of the Unborn. Before I go on, let me explain the egg. I say Numen technology because we learn from the Mimic Tear ashes that Mimic Tears are an attempt of the Eternal City to forge a lord. Their transformation, and them in general, are very reminiscent of the Silver Tears that we find throughout the Eternal Cities. I believe the larval tears that are found in these sentient balls are a component of this, said to be the core of what forms the Silver Tears. This is also one of the ingredients that we require to rebirth, which, in my opinion, only strengthens the connection between what we see in the Mimic and Silver Tears and the perfected version of this technology. If you've seen my previous video, you'll know that Marika is a Numen, and that I believe that she was one of the rulers of one of the Eternal Cities. I believe the Amber Egg is the perfected version of this civilization's quest to create technology to create a lord. The Amber Egg is a treasure that houses the Rune of Rebirth gifted to Rennala by Radagon before he returned to the royal capital at the behest of Marika. As for what it's made from, I believe it very well could be a component of a fully grown Astel, donning these familiar amber gold shapes, whereas its pre-evolved state dons these same shapes but silver. Almost like a perfect analogy between these two technologies, the silver and incomplete Numen technology, and the gold-amber complete technology. Either that, or Marika, who is somewhat of a smith herself, used the materials from the Astel to create the amber egg, which seems to almost incorporate the design and function of the eggs attached to the ants found bloated from Newman runes and rune arcs, with even similar striations and a similar function as a sort of womb to process runes. I believe it acts as a catalyst for the rune of rebirth. The fact that it is made of amber is also very important, and should provide insight enough into the capability of this item as a catalyst. Let me provide a comparison so the meaning of amber is understood. Starlight shards are an ephemeral sliver that gives off a pale blue glow, what remains of a passing flash of starlight, a prized item that was once used in the Eternal City as an ingredient in intoxicating draughts. This is the exact shard that Seluvis uses to make his potions that allow him to make puppets out of mortals. Amber shards, an ephemeral sliver that gives off a pale amber glow, what remains of a passing flash of starlight. If the stars command our fates, then amber-hued stars must command the fates of gods. Such is the belief that inspired the use of these shards to prepare a most special draught, cannot be consumed by mere humans. This is the very draught that Seluvis attempts to get us to give Rani, in order to control her fate. I would argue this amber egg, or amber womb, is the god equivalent to a mortal egg, or womb. I believe the rune of rebirth acts like the final piece of this technology, allowing it to give life to shards of one soul, a sentient Horcrux that was infused into the egg after being transferred from the host. Based on the available information and when he first appears in lore, it's difficult to determine when exactly Radagon was created, perhaps acting in the background, stacking up accolades while Godwyn was being made. But at some point early on, it is my belief that Marika made Radagon by divesting herself of loyalty and giving it a corporeal form and life with the amber egg. By shedding her loyalty and love using the amber egg giving form to them as Radagon and Godwyn, she assured herself that she would not be hindered by unnatural loyalty to the Golden Order, nor love for her beloved or children. This would allow her to do the monstrous, heartless things required for her plan to work. At the same time, while these aspects could not be used against her, nor hinder her necessary actions, they could act autonomously with love and loyalty, ultimately for herself, to her end. Her love would quell the ancient dragons when they besieged the Golden Order, and established kinship, turning a powerful enemy into a powerful ally, provide the maternal love to other demigods that she was no longer able to in order to manipulate that attachment later. Surrender its own being to her cause for freedom via the ultimate act of love, sacrifice, and even after death, corrode the very foundations of her greatest enemy. Her loyalty would quell the undefeatable Carrion forces and establish kinship, turning a powerful enemy into a powerful ally, father the next 3 of her children, and in doing so, aid her escape. And when the time came, as a final act of loyalty to her, aid in shattering the Elden Ring, as we see in this original cinematic, the form of Radagon beating down upon the Elden Ring. And while many have argued that this is him attempting to repair the ring, and there are item descriptions saying he did as much, there are fissures and cracks forming in him with every hit of the Elden Ring. A rather strange analogy for someone trying to repair something. The scene culminates in him appearing as Marika, also donning the cracks. My theory is his loyalty to Marika drove him to destroy the ring with her, but his loyalty to the Golden Order drove him to attempt to repair it afterwards. As Radagon is the embodiment of Marika's loyalty, this conflict is completely natural, and we can kind of see why she divested herself of him. Same for Godwyn and his capacity for self-sacrifice, 2 traits she could not afford on her journey to godhood. And, or, at the very least, take the fall for her sin, fooling the greater will into believing her captured and contained. As Radagon, with Renala, Marika had 3 children, 2 cursed and 1 born, suspiciously perfect. I believe this pattern of 3 children, 2 cursed and 1 perfect, is a prevalent and important pattern in all of her romantic encounters. And this is done in order to hide her true intentions behind procreating the special 3rd child. a sentient aspect of herself infused with life and given form by the Amber Egg and Rune of Rebirth. As for the curses of Radahn and Rykard, I would argue Radahn suffers from gigantism and uses gravity magic to alleviate his condition, as shown by his beloved horse, and Rykard is tremendously mentally ill, as shown by his predilection to sadomasochism and evil. He also fed himself to a snake. Sounds pretty cursed to me. I have a video planned to explore the curses of Marika's children and her culpability in those curses, so for the sake of brevity, I won't take those points further here. Marika divested herself of ambition and what is most important to her, and using the Amber Egg in conjunction with the Rune of the Unborn, gave form to Ranni, delivered to the Golden Order repelling fortress of Raya Lucaria by Radagon, positioning her strategically to cultivate in secret using the sorcerers and carrions, who not only have an extensive and established connection with the Eternal Cities, their worship of the moon and their god-killing technology, but are also a force capable of repelling the Golden Order to a standstill and who lock themselves away during the Shattering. All of this set the stage for Ranni's eventual ascension and the return of Marika's original god, or perhaps Erdtree equivalent, and the Lunar Age. Ranni was able to go back to her Numen Nox roots and rediscover the Dark Moon, and set upon restoring the Lunar Age of the Stars. This would neatly bring Marika full circle, returning to her genocided people's roots and the technology they made to fulfill their initial and ultimate goal, the monopoly of the stars and moon, the ultimate long play. I believe fronting Ranni as the new messiah for this lost order is what allowed her to manipulate the remnants of the Glomide Queen's forces. If they didn't know that she was Marika, the one who potentially betrayed their original queen, and if they instead saw Ranni as a return to their way of life and culture, as a new queen to follow to the age of stars and the moon, then it would make sense why we see them in some peculiar locations. For example, the Godskin noble we see defending Ranni's tower. Or near other important sites that I'll be mentioning later. Whereas the Black Knife Assassins are Marika's equivalent to the Glomide Queen's Godskin, like the royal families of two different factions of the Eternal Cities. Again, if you want more information about that relationship, please see my previous video. However, in short and for the sake of brevity, the Numen runes suggest that Marika is a Numen, whereas the Black Knife Assassin's gear suggests they are also Numen with close ties to Marika. And finally, and sadly I didn't mention this in my previous video, which is just so sad and grating because it really does tie up all of these events very neatly. Rogier's quote refers to the Black Knife Assassins as scions of the Eternal City. Again, if you want more information about that and what I think Marika did to the inhabitants of the nameless Eternal City, then please have a look at my last video. I found the missing inhabitants of the nameless Eternal City. It was at this point, having now shed her loyalty and love, and the most important parts of herself safeguarded in Raya Lucaria, that she began the next phase of her plan before the final act. Just a few further notes before the final act. I believe Blythe was sent by the Greater Will to watch over the only Empyrean with a shadow who lived away from the royal capital, when they started queuing on to what Marika may have been doing. By this time, however, it was too late, and their miscalculations too insurmountable. Everything really is set up too well for Ranni for it to simply be a coincidence. I find it important to note as well, assuming my theory thus far, Ranni being divested of love and loyalty is likely what allowed her to carry through with sacrificing herself and Godwyn, who I believe gave himself to the ritual to assist Marika as an act of ultimate love. Something she could never afford to do in her grand plan, and thus something she divested herself of. That could now, as a separate but same entity, instead become a powerful tool to work in her favor. Like Radagon, the Lil Hound of the Golden Order. Not to mention, it follows suit since, for the most part, she's a calculated, ice-cold
Oh, a dogged fellow, aren't we? Or is it merely thy habit to talk to dolls? Fine. Fine. I hadn't expected any soul to recognize me in this guise. But now the cat is out the bag. I cannot allow thee thy freedoms. Perform for me a service as recompense. The name of Rani the Witch is already sullied by thee. I will not brook disobedience in this matter.
Which? I believe it was the presence of Iggy and Blythe, which was intentional, that allowed her to regain some of these qualities as shown in her final words.
Tell Blythe and Iggy I love them.
What better paragons of love and loyalty than these two? Iggy, a father figure who, in place of the absent Radagon, loved her so much that there was no obstacle he would not help her surpass, no matter the cost, and tie up any loose end, even his own. Blythe was so loyal to her that he escaped an Everjail to be by her side and overwrit his programming. That's like a human overriding their genes with will. Meanwhile, Celovus was an ever-present reminder as to what a disgusting monster one can become if they abandon these virtues, turning everyone around them into puppets to control and sacrifice. A disgusting and pitiable husk of what they once were, void of love and loyalty, vying only for their own gain, while pretending to be grander than they really are. If I stretch a bit further, I would say this was done intentionally to reinforce the virtues of love and loyalty, and reinforce what kind of monster you can become when you lack these values. Perhaps Marika's way of showing that while she had to shed these values in order to escape her master, they are not something to be discarded, but instead something to be treasured, and not something that she happily surrendered. After all, look what she became as a result. Look what she did to the ones she loved. Before the final act begins, I have a thought to share. I wonder why Renala so calmly fell into what appears to be a patient, hopeful, but broken delusion, clutching the amber egg almost faithfully beneath a statue of a man who broke her heart. Why that, instead of a blind rage worthy of waging war over? Her husband, stolen from her by a monarch she was previously at war with, vows of peace shattered and violated. I wonder if Radagon told her about his little secret, and if he told her anything, how much. In the sanctum of Rey Lucaria, did he confide in her and reveal to the Lunar Queen that he and Marika were in fact one in the same? Why then would she go to war against her own beloved? Perhaps he went that step further and revealed Marika's grand plan, and the fact that little Rani housed her beloved, who was being forced against their own will to go to such lengths to escape the oppression of the greater will. Their yearning for the revival of the Age of Stars and Moon that the Numen and Nox once worshipped. As the Lunar Queen, how could she not understand and support her beloved's desire to usher in the Lunar Age? How could she not empathize with their plight? How could she do anything but surrender and oblige? I wonder if this is why she remains unkillable and protecting the Amber Egg. I wonder if this is why Rani was allowed the counsel of a traitor who wears a reflecting mask, and why her company was chosen so carefully, almost balancing the losses Marika suffered, divesting herself of love and loyalty. Before the DLC trailer, Marika's final family had me scratching my scalp until it bled trying to decipher, and despite all my efforts, I struggled to narrow down the details. While I theorized everything had been positioned as it was to support Rani's ascension, and that was the logic I would follow, there was an abundance of theories and alternatives to parts of those theories, so many that it became overwhelming. I narrowed down the finale of this chapter into two possibilities, and I will explore the main one I ended up deciding on, though it was a very close call. Miquella is Saint Trina, Melina, and Mesmer. The shattering is the figurative gunshot signaling the beginning of the end of Marika's long planning, and the return of the Tarnished, who Marika ordered to divest of their grace, die, and return once more in service to her, to return movement to the stars and become Elden Lord. That time was now. With the deadliest threats, both internally and externally, now neutralized, with her sentient Horcruxes positioned exactly where she wanted them, Radagon left the sanctuary of Rey Lucaria and his beloved Lunar Queen to return to what remained of Marika at the capital. Marika and Radagon had 2 natural-born children together, and as the Amber Egg and Rune of Rebirth were in the protection of Renala, no special third child was born. Yet, the twin prodigies Miquella and Melania, just like the other natural-born children, were born cursed. They took on traits of their parents, either this was intentional or simply the product of natural birthing and the mix of genes, but the end result is that they are almost a mimicry of their parents. Miquella the Golden, the most fearsome Empyrean, and Melania, his other half, fiercely loyal and powerful. Ultimately, I believe this is exploited by Marika, who would know intimately how that relationship operates and how to manipulate it. After being disappointed by his father's inability to provide anything to assist his afflicted sister, Miquella desperately searches for a cure for his sister's worsening condition. As he is desperately searching for answers, Marika, through Rani, killed his beloved brother. That very same brother who provided the maternal love that Marika was no longer able to provide, creating a deep sentimental connection between the two of them that she could manipulate later. I say Marika through Rani because Rani personally admits to the crime, takes from Malekith shards of the Rune of Death, betraying him, and orchestrates the Night of Black Knives. It's obvious to me that Marika is behind this through Rani, as who else could rob Malekith, the shadow of a god, as well as the allusion to his betrayal? Who else is of the same stock of, and has close ties to, the Black Knives? While it does not change the events themselves, I personally believe Godwyn, who is Marika in the same way Radagon is, and who is capable of killing this, actually surrendered himself to Rani's cause as a final act of love for Marika, and by extension, himself and Rani, and secretly, perhaps unknowingly on Godwyn's part, to drive Miquella to desperation as part of Marika's plan. This all takes place as Miquella is already desperately searching for a cure for his sister after a failed attempt, and from his perspective, suddenly his despair was compounded with his beloved brother being robbed of his life in a profane ritual. Racked with despair, Miquella turns to his mother, who guides him to move to resurrect Godwyn using a solar eclipse. But Marika, who is Rani, is well aware solar eclipses are determined by the movement of the moon, and Lunar Princess Rani has no interest in allowing her work to be undone. I believe Marika suggested this full well knowing that it wouldn't work, and to drive Miquella to even further extremes, and she just so happens to know a way, something she herself has done before. He must ascend to godhood in order to undo his sister's curse and offer Godwyn a true death. And I believe it was potentially Marika who seduced him with this idea, similarly to how the Greater Will seduced her with godhood, and perhaps even supported him in his endeavors to establish the Erdtree, teaching him the art of cultivating minor Erdtrees. If Marika was meddling in this process, then we would expect to see indications of Marika, no? The liturgical town Ordina is defended by a Black Knife assassin, whose outfit can be found at that very city. If this assassin was a prisoner, why would the Albinaurics defending the city not be dead? Are they 2 prisoners? No. She is here to defend this town from meddlers. Further to this point, if you've seen my previous video, you'll understand why this town's similarities, this town's striking similarities to Celia, are relevant. I believe Marika baited Miquella with unalloyed gold via Radagon to have its failure turn him from the Golden Order, suggested the eclipse for Godwyn, knowing it would fail and drive him to even more desperate methods, and when he was most unsure, she provided him with the Epiphany, or method of ascension via creating his own Erdtree, which eventuated in him embedding himself into the Erdtree to metamorphosize into a god. Such a caring mother. I'm unsure if or not the shattering happened before Miquella entered the Erdtree to slumber, but it would make sense if he entered his slumber, and that was the cue for Marika to begin the shattering. Why do I say this? Well, the fact it ensured 2 of the most powerful Empyreans wouldn't move during this crucial time until she wanted them to, aside, each normal-born sibling of the God Queen have matching runes, Mohg and Morgott, while what was intended to be Godwyn's rune is unique, specified as an anchoring rune. Radahn and Rykard Yet Rani surrendered her rune. I wonder, was this the rune of the Unborn? Why then would it match Melania's rune? My theory is that Rani surrendered her rune to the moon, which, if like Godwin's rune, is an anchoring rune, perhaps that which forms the structure to hold together the Elden Ring. So if Miquella's matching rune to Melania's is embedded in the Amber Egg, that would imply either Miquella was not around after the Shattering to receive a great rune of the Elden Ring, meaning he was embedded in the Erdtree before the Shattering, and his rune was actively used by Marika until that point, which I believe to be the case. Or his shard is a different one, not matching Melania's, perhaps another anchor rune, which we may discover to be Mesmer's rune. Or Miquella created his own rune, as we see in the gameplay trailer, as others before him have done, which seems like a play on his Unborn rune as maybe an anchor rune. As Miquella undergoes his transformation, guarded by his fearsome and undefeated Empyrean sister, moving through the Shadow Realm as Saint Trina, Radahn is suddenly inspired to halt the movement of the stars, pausing his transformation while he is most vulnerable and giving cause for his undefeatable protector to abandon her post. Perhaps it was an order from his father, the Lil Hound of the Golden Order, in other words, Marika, to halt the fates of the demigods in defense of the Greater Will and the Golden Order. Or perhaps it was Marika who whispered lies into his ear about Celia being threatened by a meteorite that never came, that he needed to protect Celia from by suspending the stars. Regardless, the stars were suspended, and the undefeated Melania abandoned her post to face Radahn, to allow Miquella to continue his transformation. A convenient pause to the whole stage while she set it for her next moves. Conveniently, and as if he were waiting for this exact moment, Moog, using a conveniently located gateway, which is co-opted Newman technology, bypasses the requirement for the secret medallion, navigates himself through the secret town defended by Marika's assassin, and all of these Albinorics, navigates his way through the Erdtree without any signs of a struggle, no blood flames or anything of the sort, snatched Miquella's cocoon while he was in stasis and brought him back to his palace, a crucible of blood. Yes, a crucible, but that's a topic for another video where I'll be exploring the many crucibles of Elden Ring. Back to the point of this video. I believe Marika orchestrated this entire series of events, just like everything else, in order to get Miquella where he was now. As he slumbered, Marika and Moog cultivated him in an ocean of blood and despair, and when the time was right, breached the cocoon, and by profane right, shattered Miquella. And through this profane alternate method to the Amber Egg and Rune of the Unborn, birthed a third child, Mesmer. As with the duality of Miquella and Saint Trina, who I think was Miquella as he slumbered in the Erdtree, I believe this profane ritual was done to give birth to Mesmer, a male, who was diametrical to Miquella, and Melina, a female, who was originally Saint Trina in the Shadow Realm and now Melina in the Lands Between. The association between Miquella and Melina is supported by the observations in the video Miquella is Melina by Tim Diggity. I would encourage you to go watch that, but in short, for the sake of brevity, the association with sleep, torrent, and the fact that Saint Trina, who is said to be Miquella, possesses a similar mark under the same eye as Melina. This mark, by the way, is shaped like the foot of a bird. Keep that in your memory box for a little later. Among several other items you should watch the aforementioned video for. Closed eyes aside, the association between Melina and Mesmer is that both are essentially kindling maidens, and destined to burn the Erdtree. Mesmer burning it down from within the Shadowlands with his flame, and Melina, the prophesized kindling maiden, leading a tarnished to the Erdtree where she would burn it from the outside. The association between Mesmer and Miquella, aside from the association between Melina and Mesmer, is the ring found on Miquella's corpse. It is two serpents intertwined with one another, in likeness to the two snakes that we see around Mesmer in the trailer. This serpentine association reminds me of Rani and therefore Marika's alliance with Rykard, as per the Blasphemous Claw description. A slab of rock engraved with traces of the Rune of Death can deflect the power of the Black Blade, On the night of the dire plot, Rani rewarded Praetor Rykard with these traces. Should the coming trespass one day transpire, they would serve as a last resort foil, allowing Rykard to challenge Malekith, the Black Blade, the Black Beast of destined death. In addition, Mesmer's flames in this scene are very reminiscent of the hexes used by Rykard, which are ancient hexes of Gelmir, who Rykard, son of Queen Renala, found and brought back into practical use as new forms of sorcery. I wonder if Rykard's hexes were at all involved with Mesmer's creation of his flame. To further support the relationship between Miquella, Mesmer, Melina, and Saint Trina, the butterflies, often believed to be symbolic of the third set of children, present the nascent, Aeonian, and smouldering butterflies. The rotten, Aeonic butterfly obviously being Melania's, the nascent being Miquella and Saint Trina's, while the smouldering being Melina's and Mesmer's, positioning them both as essentially kindling maidens, as it reads. An eternally burning butterfly found near wildfires and elsewhere serves as the kindling for a number of items. I am going to briefly discuss an item from in the DLC, so if you don't want to see it, please skip to 31:22. I find it necessary to note, by the way, that the new butterfly said to be Mesmer's very well could be, but just the Shadow Realm equivalent of this fractured existence, which makes me wonder if we'll run into any other butterflies. However, I find it curious that these are referred to as butterflies, while this one is referred to as a Pyrefly. I believe there was somewhat of a swap. Mesmer was born into the Shadow Realm by sacrificing Miquella's real body to wage war on the Erdtree's shadow and secure the pocket dimension for Marika to work behind the scenes in. With this act, the shadow version of the Round Table Hold, which I will refer to as the Shadow Hold, was established as the pocket within the Shadow Realm that the chosen Tarnished would be funneled to be guided and manipulated by Marika. Everything here is built specifically for her to be able to manipulate you, to guide the Tarnished along Marika's plan. There is what I believe to be the discarded vestiges of grace from Godfrey and his ilk, watched over by what I would argue are very corrupted Two Fingers. Either that, or they're being heavily manipulated and don't know it, and discover this once Melina reaches the base of the Erdtree, which is when they begin to seize and reevaluate things. The finger reader crone Enya, who is meant to be the translator for the Two Fingers and therefore the Greater Will, yet towards the end, when the Greater Will is inert, she basically encourages us to go burn down the Erdtree.
To return, you know what this means. The Erdtree has spurned you. The fingers remain still. Shaken by this turn of events, they are busy consulting the Greater Will. When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass. No matter for me, but you. How will you ever manage to wait? My, oh my. Heavens forbid. That is not the domain of mere men. The burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. And you say you seek the power of the Rune of Death too? The Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is Destined Death. The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation. Unleashing the rune now would be unthinkable. The fingers would never permit it. Nor would the Greater Will. But here we are. The fingers dormant, severing our link to the Greater Will. The realm and all life in ruins. Impossible events transpire beyond the ken of the fingers. Who is to say that the cardinal sin must be cardinal forever? Go on. Finish the job. Take the course you deem most worthy. You must find kindling. Only the smoldering flame in the great forge of the giants on the highest peak in the lands between can burn the Erdtree. But special kindling is required to reignite the flame. For the flame to burn the Erdtree, a sacrifice is needed. Of one who envisions the flame and can lead you to the rune of death.
That doesn't sound like a very finger-eater-crony thing to say.
Turn back. Ahead lies the land of the giant's flame, and the way forth is forbidden. Hear me. The burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. Doing so will unbind destined death and slay the world itself. Who would dare put you up to such a task? Most certainly not the Fingers.
Gideon, who does nothing but feed the Tarnished the distilled whispers of Marika, and who was shook when he discovered Marika's full plan, and Hugh, who is producing a god-slaying weapon at the behest of Marika. We also find him confidently praying to her as if he knows that she can hear what he's saying.
Oh, your divinity, have mercy and grant me forgiveness. The road is yet long, a god is not easily felled. But one day without fail you will have your wish. So please grant me forgiveness, Queen Marika.
All of the ingredients to groom the perfect god-slaying lord to carry out the final stages of her plan. A further note to this to support either Melina's tie to the Shadowhold or the fact the Shadowhold is located in the Shadow Realm is that when the Erdtree burns, so too does it. This would make sense if it is located in the Erdtree's shadow. Well, okay, if it burns when the Erdtree burns, wouldn't that suggest that it's the Erdtree? Well, no. The Dung Eater corrupts those he kills, preventing them from returning to the Erdtree. If these are the souls of the people he corrupted, being kept from the Erdtree and in the Shadow Hold, it would suggest that this is in fact not the Erdtree itself, and is somewhere outside of the Erdtree's purview in its shadow, where all of the unwanted secrets pertaining to the origins of the Erdtree are buried. As Miquella was sacrificed to create Mesmer to be Marika's force inside the Shadow Realm and instigate the burning from within, Saint Trina was sacrificed in the Shadow Realm, I believe potentially in the Round Table Hold, and given form in the real world as Melina, born and raised at the foot of the Erdtree by these mysterious officials, to serve her purpose by following the echoes of Marika, to guide the Chosen Tarnished to Marika's headquarters, and eventually burn the Erdtree from outside as the kindling maiden for the Chosen Tarnished. We never see Miquella in the real world aside from his corpse, but we will see Mesmer in the Shadow Realm, where Miquella's touch transports us to. We never see Melina in the Round Table Hold, except for, maybe, her corpse, even though her touch transports us there. The only smouldering body found in the Round Table Hold has a painting in place of it in the real Round Table Hold. This painting, interestingly titled Flightless Bird, brings us to the windmill village overlooking the walls of Lendel. What is utterly compelling is the incantation dropped by the painter as a vestige. Fire's Deadly Sin reads, incantation originating from a deeply ominous prophecy, sets both the caster and the surrounding area ablaze with raging flames. The caster's body will remain engulfed in flame for a while, burning them and any who draw near. The prophet despaired, looking up at the Erdtree, for soon the kindling would burst into flame, bringing ruin. The burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. That is not the domain of mere men. Compare this to the Blade of Calling wielded by Melina, which reads, "Dagger given to one who set out on a journey to fulfill her duty long ago." The power of its former owner, the Kindling Maiden, is still apparent. The one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death. The connection should be clear. As per the juvenile scholar outfit, the process of imperfect rebirth results in memory loss. Cap worn by young Academy scholars, the juveniles birthed anew by the amber egg of Queen Renala, the head of Raya Lucaria Academy. Yet their rebirth is not without imperfections, and thus do they repeat the process, eventually becoming utterly dependent on it. Rebirth is as sleep to them, and with each awakening, memory fades into oblivion. I believe this is why there are convenient holes in Melina's memory, as she was born not via a perfected method using the amber egg and rune of rebirth, but instead an imperfect and profane ritual at the foot of the Erdtree, in secret, and raised by officials, whose outfit reads, "Grubby blue robe worn by magisterial officials to carry out their grim tasks, surveillance, executions, gruesome rituals. The darkest duties drive the wheels of mankind." We find these robes on a corpse seated outside of what appears to be a secret prison cell, located most of the way down an elevator just before the Forbidden Lands. A secret chamber that holds Melina's Blade of Calling, which is reminiscent of the Black Knives of the Black Knives, and shares a similar moveset and Ash of War. In addition, Melina's own method of fighting is almost identical to that of the Black Knives, strengthening the ties between them and Marika even further. One of the only other interesting and notable things that can be drawn out of this room is the carpet. No, I'm not kidding. All throughout the lands between, different factions seem to have different designs on their carpets, including some similar designs in similar areas, such as places of worship. With that understood and considered, this is the Raya Lucaria and Carrion symbol. The only place this unique design on carpet is found is Raya Lucaria, Carrion Manor, and in the secret inverted tower that hides Rani's transgressions. So why do we find this exact carpet leading up to and in this cage? Not blue, like in the Carrion Manor and Raya Lucaria and Inverted Tower, but red. I was unable to find this carpet or this pattern used anywhere else in Leyndell, let alone anywhere else in the game. The Carrion and Raya Lucarian patterns found inverted in colour and around and in this secret room in Leyndell. This room is more akin to a prison cell, or a cage for a flightless bird. This was so she could follow a specific purpose, raised in seclusion, to become the Kindling Maiden. She demonstrates a lack of understanding of her mother and having a mother by the way she speaks of Bok.
Your seamster, Bok. He is always eager to see your return. Please, will you talk to him when you can? I'm sure he would be much contented. I see him crying from time to time. I think he misses his mother. He wants someone to tell him he's beautiful. Does being born of a mother mean one behaves in such a manner?
My guess is that she never personally met Marika. She in fact only knows the spoken echoes of Marika, which were left to her as a trail to follow and be guided by. And when she regains her memories at the foot of the Erdtree, she almost seems bitter and agitated, staunchly stating that she intends to follow her own path, regardless of Marika's design.
I have set my heart upon the world that I would have, regardless of my mother's designs. I won't allow anyone to speak ill of that, not even you.
This sounds like the words and tone of someone who has realized betrayal and is unsettled by their fate. Ultimately, Melina decides to succumb to her mother's plans and abandon her fate, fulfilling the prophecy of the Kindling Maiden and burning the Erdtree from the outside, while Mesmer burns the Erdtree from within. This allows the chosen Tarnished to bring about the return of the Newman Nox Lunar Age, and Marika as Rani's ascension to godhood. Marika's final gambit being us paying off and joining her on her journey, thus the main story ending of the main game, Marika's victory. While this may seem like Melina ultimately capitulates to what Marika wanted, I interpret this more as Melina choosing her own path by putting her faith in us instead, for us to choose our own path, whatever that may be. I believe the DLC will offer us an alternative rune or source of order as an alternative to Marika's main ending. I believe the DLC will allow us to explore Miquella's alternative to this ending, where instead the Tarnished follows after Miquella instead of Rani. My guess would be following the echoes of Saint Trina, much like Melina and the echoes of Marika. So there you have it. Marika shed herself of the traits that would hinder her psychopathic 4D chess moves, planted aspects of herself strategically to perform their part, manipulated her lovers, almost all of her natural-born children, herself, and in the end married the final threat to her, us. Those sound like the almost incomprehensible machinations of a trapped god vying for its freedom to me. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on why Marika is Voldemort. I have burnt myself out pretty badly making these two huge YouTube long-form videos straight after each other. So the next few videos will be shorts made from these videos, so the people that can't handle 45-minute videos can still get something out of my content, and some PvP montages so I can show you all some delicious scum magic and lose subscribers. But don't despair, I have some long-form videos planned with the scripts already written. I will also be doing some lore and lure sessions on YouTube Live, so if you have the inclination for lore psychosis and murder, please join me. I will happily have fun matches and some fights with subscribers and anyone who shows up. I'd like to genuinely thank everyone for their likes, comments, subscriptions, and feedback. We almost hit 1k subs on the first video, which is wild considering this channel started with 2 subscribers. Your compliments and theories were genuinely so fun to read. Ironically, I heard you all loud and clear in the last video regarding the sound. Please let me know in the comments how things are this time around. Your feedback is genuinely appreciated, and I read every single comment. Finally, and again, thank you to KickSix for his early morning lore psychosis company, alternate thoughts, and assistance in making some beautiful clips. I will shill for this man until I die. Please go follow him on Twitch. He is a certified 10.